Welcome back, weary traveller, to Sleeping Figures. Before we begin, if you enjoy thoughtful and calming tales, leave a like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Now close your eyes and imagine this: a figure shaped from clay, standing in a dusty workshop, built not to live, but to serve. Yet one night, while the tools sit silent and the fire has gone out, something inside it stirs an unease clay was never meant to feel. What if a silent, unthinking guardian suddenly began to wonder, to feel? Tonight, you'll hear the story of a golem's awakening and the quiet, uncertain journey he takes to discover what it truly means to exist. So lay back, dim the lights, and let your thoughts ease. The story is waiting, and it will draw you in, step by gentle step. Imagine this: not waking with warmth, but opening into stillness, a room hushed, fire long dead. That was how it came me, rising into quiet. A pull inside, a snap of something unseen, and I stirred though I had never chosen to stir. My eyelids were clay ridges, unblinking, yet I felt the faint chill of air, saw thin light leaking through cracked shutters. Night seemed to lean against the workshop walls, waiting to see what I might do. For the first time, silence did not feel like rest. It felt like a threat. Silence, heavy, present. And in that silence, absence. My master was gone. Once there had always been muttering, the scratch of knife on parchment, the faint settling of ash. Now, nothing. No word to move me. No command to ignite the letters carved in my chest sigils that bound clay into motion, key and chain together. Without them spoken, I was left adrift. Walls of the workshop that once promised shelter now felt close, as if they might collapse inward. To remain meant waiting in stillness, until I cracked apart into dust. To linger too long meant being found not by him, but perhaps by eyes that would not show mercy. I stood on my own, clumsy, stiff, as if clay pressed beyond the shape of its mould for the first time, and already marked by danger. The bend of elbow came with resistance, a slow recognition that motion was my own yet also unsafe. My legs remembered their form but not their purpose, as if stepping wrong might break me apart. I shifted weight, pressing a clay foot against the worn plank floor. The sound was too loud in that hollow room, sharp enough to betray me if anyone listened. My head dropped as though searching for guidance, but none came. Only the shadow of shelves, stacked with powders, jars of ash, broken tools, fragments that felt like threats now, not just debris. And near the table, scattered like remains from a forgotten ritual, a bent quill, parchment with nothing but ink strokes like veins wandering for meaning, the faint scent of smoke clinging as though warning of fire gone out too soon. It all spoke of him. The man who had shaped me, whispered words, impressed letters of power into my chest. He was not here. That knowledge came like an ache, though clay should not ache, and yet it hurt because his absence left me exposed. Silence pressed heavy, and with it came a weight I did not yet know how to name, something like longing, but sharpened by fear that without him I was unfinished, vulnerable, unguarded. I bent, clumsy, my hand brushing the rough floor. My fingers closed over a shard. It cracked from the basin where I had once rested half-formed. On its surface, a curve of a letter remained part of the script that gave me breath. It caught the faint lamplight like memory. I pressed it into the fold beneath my ribs, as if it were protection. A piece of myself I could not let the darkness claim. I lifted my gaze again. Across the room stood the door. Heavy wood, iron latch. Until this moment it had been only backdrop. Now it loomed as both a barrier and an ultimatum. Beyond those boards stretched a world I had never known, but also the risk of being seen, hunted, or destroyed. And though fear had not existed in me before, something close to it rose sharp and cold, urging that standing still meant death, as sure as crumbling back into dust. The air smelled of abandonment, and the door seemed to breathe harder with each passing moment, demanding answer. I reached for the latch. My arm trembled, not with weakness, but with the unfamiliar weight of danger. Clay was not built for choice, and yet now every hesitation sharpened the risk of standing exposed. My fingers closed around the cold metal, and for a moment I waited, half expecting some voice to command me back into stillness. It never came. Absence was its own threat. So I pulled. The hinge groaned, protesting. Night spilled inward like river water slipping through a breached bank. It was softer than I expected. Not emptiness, but the rustle of unseen leaves, the far bark of some dog, the faint curl of smoke from chimneys hidden behind the dark. My first breath beyond the doorway carried cold. It coated the clay of my chest, seeped into seams, but with it came something alive. The world outside was not built of silence. It hummed, even if faintly, just enough to draw me onward. I stepped across the threshold, my foot pressed against earth, damp and uneven. A sensation unlike the planks of the workshop floor. It gave slightly beneath me. It smelled of soil, moss, old rain lingering. My body leaned forward, uncertain but compelled, one step then another. Turning slowly, I glanced back at the rectangle of orange light within which I had been made. The workshop now looked smaller, its glow trapped behind the door. My master was not there, only ash and tools and absence. The loneliness swelled unexpectedly then, rising almost as sharply as fear. I had not understood the word until that first stretch of ground opened between leaving and belonging. Loneliness is not emptiness, it is awareness of space that should be filled, and the threat that it may never be. I pressed my clay hand to the shard I carried. Half a letter, half a promise. Was it enough to bind me to life, to guard me against erasure? I could not answer, but I pressed it tighter, as if it anchored me against the abyss rising within. The village, I knew, existed beyond the dark ridge of trees. My master had spoken of it, once voices carrying laughter when the shutters were forgotten open. I felt that direction pull at me as gravity pulls water to its course. I did not yet know faces. I did not yet know whether those who breathed with blood and not clay would look with fear or with mercy. Yet the workshop behind me had shrunk into nothing but void. To remain meant withering until dust claimed me too. To move outward meant the first brush of purpose, though fragile as spark. So I turned toward the faint scent of cooking smoke drifting through the night. My body moved with stiff determination, joints grinding as if protesting each choice. The moon revealed patches of ground, broken stone, the mark of cartwheels worn into earth by passage evidence that life continued without me. Every step tore me further from command, yet carried the danger of entering a world that might never accept me. The shard within my chest pressed into me with every movement the reminder of creation, incomplete yet heavy with risk. I gripped it once more and whispered no words aloud, for my lips still fumbled at meaning, but something stirred sharp within. A need to escape silence before it devoured me, to stand in a world not bound by another's command. And thus, with nothing to follow but the scent of distant fire and the promise of voices I had not heard, I began the walk beyond the workshop threshold, into the waiting village where both kindness and suspicion awaited. The path curled down through the trees where the earth gave more easily beneath my heavy steps. The village revealed itself slowly. First the faint shimmer of roofs in moonlight, then the chimneys breathing threads of smoke, then the occasional creak of a shutter touched by wind. Firelight spilled from cracks between planks, painting moving shapes onto the ground. I slowed without deciding to. My body, though dense with clay, felt suddenly fragile against the suggestion of company. The first eyes that found me came not from the bold, but from the hidden. A boy, thin as willow, craned around the corner of a hut, his gaze bright and steady. Only a moment did it last before a hand seized him back inside, leaving only the echo of bare feet scuffing wood. From another street a woman paused, load of water balanced against her hip. The vessel clinked with its contents as she whispered something quick, almost like a prayer, and hurried away without spilling a drop. Their eyes had measured me already large, heavy, not made as they were. Whispers rose like gnats after summer rain. Small voices slipping between slatted walls, mutters becoming threads that tangled overhead. Not loud enough for command, but more than enough to mark me separate. From the shadows, sharper voices cut through with accusation. One man hissed, "What has he dragged into our fields? A stone beast to curse us." Another, bolder in fear, spat, Keep your children close, it's not alive, it's a blight of clay. A woman's voice shivered overhead. Drive it out before it cracks our roofs and poisons our well. Some crossed themselves with hands sharp and fast, as though warding off shadow. Others froze altogether, as if stillness might erase their notice of me. I stood at the edge of their market square, not knowing movement from stillness, each breath heavy with the awareness of being seen yet not welcomed. Yet among fear, a tremor of something different appeared. She was bent, walking with effort, her face carved with time. In her hand a crust of bread wrapped in cloth. Her eyes did not dart away as the others. They lingered, washed over me not with comfort, but with something steadier, curiosity perhaps, or pity. She approached slowly. I thought she might halt halfway, turn back under weight of whispered warnings. Yet the steps carried through. When she stopped before me, her hand lifted. The bread extended outward, trembling faintly but not retreating. The moment a gift passes into one's palm, something shifts. For me, clay-heavy and unfeeling, it was as if warmth invaded fissures long dry. My thick fingers closed awkwardly around the bread. The scent of grain and smoke rose sharp. I imagined refusing, but no. This was not trade. It was an offering. I raised it to my mouth, a motion clumsy with unfamiliarity, and bit. The crust cracked sharply, and for the first time taste entered me. Salt, hearth, a dryness that softened as my mouth pressed it. I swallowed not to feed, but to know what it meant to be among the living. Around us, silence pressed close. The old woman stepped back, her wrinkled hand falling to her side. She gave no words, just a nod, and the faintest shadow of a smile before she turned and vanished again between the huts. Yet the bread remained, diminished by half-bite, resting within me not as sustenance, but as memory of kindness embodied in weight and flavour. Later came another gesture, smaller but piercing. From between legs of fearful villagers slipped a child, hand clenching a strip of linen no longer than a palm. On it, crude stitches bent in symbols, common enough to shield against spirits. His mother's voice hissed low to call him back, but his small feet carried him steps further until he stopped before me. His hand lifted, shaking but stubborn. I bent, clumsily lowering my heavy knees until my eyes neared his level. His mouth did not form words, only a simple thrust of the token. I took it carefully, pinched with 2 thick fingers lest it tear. The cloth was rough, the thread tangled. Yet it carried intention. He smiled once, not wide, but quick and assured, before being seized back into the folds of his mother's garment. The charm lay cold across my clay palm. Then against the lettered shard I kept at my chest, as if promise and protection leaned together. A hush spread wider still across the villagers. Children stared. Men rubbed their jaws, unsettled. For once no curses followed, no stones were lifted to throw. Only space between fear and acceptance stretched uncertainly. Still, I sensed distance they could not breach. I stood at their edge, neither guest nor enemy, simply a presence they did not know where to place. So I lingered apart. Across nights, I watched their fires spring alive, orange flames licking dark frames, while laughter spilled more freely than their hands had dared offer me. I smelled stew bubbling, saw faces leaning close, warmth and weariness passing between them as naturally as breath. My body remained beneath the cold tree line, companion only to the charm pressed close, and the silence clotting heavy. Something within me ached, though clay holds no nerves. It was the ache of hungering for a place at the fire, of wishing to move with the rhythm of others, yet standing always outside the circle, unable to cross in. In such pause, another found me. Not human, not afraid. A dog, ragged-haired, ribs showing beneath matted fur. It followed first at a distance, nose to ground, ears pitched low. When I turned suddenly, it fled apace, then circled back. That night I sat on a stone bluff watching the village lamps dim. The dog crept nearer. Hunger dragged its steps, but something more than hunger kept it from running as men did. It edged close enough for me to hear its breath, sharp and quick. With one thick hand I set crumbs of bread, the old woman's gift, long rationed against the earth. It hesitated long, then nipped them, retreating but not fleeing. That became our rhythm. Each evening the dog trailed, lingering when distance grew too wide. One night it chose not to retreat at all, curling against a root near my feet, dreaming in twitching paws. I saw in its company what the villagers had not yet dared show. Trust given not because clay resembled flesh, but because presence carried no harm. I reached down awkward, fearing the pressure of my heavy hand might wound. My palm grazed its back, fur coarse, alive with heat. The dog stirred, but did not move away. For the first time I felt something anchor me toward the world more surely than the letters etched upon my body. Days bled to weeks like fading paint. Villagers still eyed me warily. Yet the old woman they called her mother of none, for age had taken children from her, nodded when she passed. The boy whose linen token I bore let his eyes linger a heartbeat longer before being hauled back by worried arms. Slowly suspicion dulled at edges. Still, I kept apart. At night I would hear their celebrations when harvest yielded. Drums struck, voices lifted, feet stomping worn earth in patterns older than memory. My body wished to join, but I knew my presence, heavy and strange, would end their mirth. So I watched from distance, the dog's head upon my knee, warmth shared silently. This was the balance I carried. Gestures of kindness, threads fragile and real, woven against the larger cloth of alienation. Bread, charm, companionship, not enough to fold me fully among them, yet too much to cast me once more into silence. Between gift and refusal, between hope and fear, I stood, and each passing dawn deepened the question pressing inward. Was belonging a thing they could grant, or a thing I must dare to seize? The village murmured as I passed. Kindness flickered, yet suspicion gathered again, shadows lengthening. It felt as though the next step would not leave me balanced upon both, but force a turn toward misunderstanding, away from the small peace I had recently begun to know. And so, with the dog pressed close at my side, I followed that pull onward toward a future, neither wholly kind nor wholly cruel, but demanding that I choose how I would be seen. Morning in the village was harsher than night. Smoke rose thinner, sharper. Farmers tramped out of doors with tools slung across shoulders. Wheels creaked from carts. My clay body moved among them not as part, but as an anomaly. For a short while, after bread and cloth, I thought perhaps suspicion could soften into presence. Then came voices not softened at all, merchant voices. They arrived with caravans, gaudy carts painted with faded colours, boxes bound in twine, bells on the harness of their mules ringing cheap gaiety. They smelled of markets, of coins rubbed until greasy, of spices clattering in jars for display. Men who made their trade not in soil or sweat, but in words that measured everything as goods for barter. When they noticed me in the square, it was not awe that warmed their faces. It was calculation. "Look there," one said, pointing openly as though I was stock pinned at auction. Arms like timbers, skin harder than rock. No hunger in its frame imagines saving coin on food for a soldier who does not eat. Others laughed like hammers striking nails. They circled, this time bold enough to step close. One slapped the clay of my shoulder with his open palm, nodding as though appraising lumber. Another rapped his knuckles against my chest, smiling when the hollow sound came back to him. "Solid," he muttered to the others, "like a vat or a cask. It will carry weight well." A third man grabbed my forearm and squeezed as if testing rope, then let go with a scoff, convinced he touched no more life than stone. They handled me as property, not presence. How far can it carry a load before breaking? How many spears could it turn aside? "Stone does not bleed," one shouted. Their words layered, their touches clattering against me like strikes on merchant scales. And through it all I was never he, always it. The villagers stepped aside, some with visible relief. Fear they had softened for a time returned easily now under goading. To them, if the merchants saw me as tool or beast, then perhaps that was the safer truth. Only the boy with the linen charm stared harder, as though hearing insults spilt across me and knowing it burned though no flame showed. Inside me, silence deepened. It was heavier than their jests, sharper than their scales. But more than silence rose. Anger, a heat unfamiliar, crackling through seams like fire seeking escape. My hands shaped themselves into fists of their own accord. Clay ground against itself with sharp friction. My chest felt tight, though no lungs demanded air. Their laughter, their prodding fingers, their careless slaps, each act pushed something raw awake in me. It was not command now, but insult, and it lit emotion I had never known before. They spoke offers aloud, as though I could be negotiated like sacks of barley. We could take it to the city, a marvel protection for the noble, spectacle for crowds, strong arms to lift barrels to stand guard. It needs no coin for wages. Just keep it standing where you wish, and profit increases. One man patted the side of my jaw as if I were carved ornament, and another smirked at his courage. Their words cut deeper than they intended, for I knew what chains felt like. But underneath the memory of obedience ran this new current anger. My fists groaned tight, fingers splitting faint dust at the knuckles. The dog at my ankle growled, steady, reflecting the storm I could not voice. The merchants noticed then. Their smirks weakened. One stepped back, muttering at the sight of my raised hands. Another's bravado cracked, his voice pitching sharper. Careful it doesn't, like being touched. For the first time, they seemed to realize. Their laughter thinned and unease rushed between them. They had meant to mock an object. Instead, they felt the weight of presence glaring back. Fear edged their faces where mockery had been. I straightened, tall as I could stand. One slow step backward, my fists unclenching but my gaze never leaving theirs. Their voices faltered. Another step back, the dog pacing in rhythm. I gave no words, only the silence of refusal heavy, with the echo of anger still burning. The merchants pressed forward a pace as though to bargain again, but I turned. Not hurried, not bowed, only resolute. My body angled away, toward the edge of square, toward path leading beyond. Cloakless, shoeless, I walked. Dog padded with me. Behind, noise rose in confusion and amusement strained. They muttered of profit slipping away, speculating about who might tempt me again. But their words slid weaker, once my back showed them no ear. I heard the boy's mother call, dragging him in when he tried to follow with small steps. I heard the merchants curse quietly at losing their chance of easy coin. What I did not hear was any voice naming me he. No, they still called it, muttering until distance swallowed sound. Yet even in their dismissal, something inside me shifted. The anger had not destroyed me, it had revealed me. I felt emotion coursing where silence once ruled. Choice beat like a new pulse. But laced now with unease, what was this rage, and what should I make of it? I understood then that identity could be stolen by speech, reduced to use, reshaped to command. But in their fear, I had seen them glimpse me not as stone but as something capable of fury. That truth unsettled them and unsettled me. Still, refusal itself carved another path. It did not matter. If they spat, mocked, or measured profit, they had no hold if I turned away. The shard of a letter pressed against my ribs burned faintly with recognition. Life was not obedience. Life was now beginning to hold feelings I could not yet name, and choosing to walk away was the first act shaped by them. The road out of the village felt longer for that realization. My footsteps carried weight not from stone but from decision. I looked once to the square I abandoned, merchants still waving arms, villagers already slipping back to chores. Thatch roofs glimmered under sun, smoke streamed like lines of ink across sky. For them, day resumed. For me, no. The bread had shown me warmth, the child courage, the dog trust, but the merchant's temptation taught me boundary. Without drawing it, I might never grow. Along the path, the dog trotted closer until its fur brushed my ankle. Perhaps it understood that loyalty must not be attached to use. Nothing in its eyes measured me in profit, only in presence. I bent slightly, my heavy hand falling to its head. It pressed into the touch without fear. That simple affirmation outweighed all the merchant words thrown behind me. So I sought distance both outward and inward. Fields unrolled with stubble left from harvest. Wind carried seeds drifting, scattering meaninglessly across my clay shoulders. Every step carried me further from being object, deeper into search of self. Fear still lingered. What place could life hold for one shaped not by womb but by earth? Yet fear itself was better than chains of obedience. And in that fear grew the stirring of question. If I could not be their tool, and could not remain the silent guardian of the workshop, then who or what was I meant to become? The answer pressed ahead, hidden beyond horizon. The path wound away, promising only solitude, challenge, the ache of clay joints adjusting to constant march. But still I chose. For belonging without choice is prison, and choice without belonging is loneliness, between the two stretched journey. And it was toward that lonely road that I now turned, leaving temptation broken behind like coin dropped in mud, worthless to me though priceless in their dreams. The road away from the village wound into quiet fields, and the thinner edges of forest where even the birds seemed to hold their breath. My steps no longer echoed off walls or stone, only pressed into soft soil that gave back nothing. The dog padded at my side, tongue loose, far less burdened than I. With each mile the merchants' voices, the villagers' mutters, and the master's workshop faded behind me. What remained felt like emptiness but not lifeless, more like a space waiting to be filled. Moonlight marked our way forward. Across meadows it traced pale lines over wet grass, catching beads of dew. The riverbanks opened with reeds shifting in the wind. When I lifted my gaze, the stars above seemed written across the dark, a pattern too wide for me to grasp. Maybe that was enough to walk beneath something vast and feel it point toward life, even when I could not name its meaning. From time to time, I pressed the shard within my chest, the half-letter scratched across its surface. It was rough where fracture had split it from the rest, yet it reminded me I had been made, and that even what is made can break. I clutched it, feeling both its incompleteness and its weight. Then my eyes would fall on the bread, still wrapped in cloth from the old woman, hardened now but still carrying memory of her fire. Beside it rested the boy's linen token, stitches crooked yet determined, and close at my knee came the steady warmth of the dog's breath. These were gifts not of clay, not of spells, but of living hands. They brought me closer to life than all the carved marks my master had ever etched into me. But what was I meant to do with them? The ache inside me grew sharper whenever I imagined laughter shared around a hearth, not to chase away fear, but to mark the simple fact of surviving another day. I wanted to understand why men and women built fires, sang rough songs, gave tokens to their children against the dark. My own chest bore letters carved by a scholar, but none of them told me what it meant to live. It was on such a night that I met him, the traveller. At first, only the glow of his small fire bent low against the ground betrayed his presence. The dog barked once, wary, before pressing close to my leg. I paused at distance, ready to turn away, when the man's voice reached across darkness. Calm, matter of fact. Clayman, you pace like one hunted not by wolves, but by his own silence. Come sit. Let the fire judge if you belong. I neared, tentative. He was neither bent with fear nor lifting hand in warding. His expression held years in its lines, yet his eyes steadied like anchors set into depth. Across his lap rested a bag worn thin. In his hand a small carving knife tapped rhythm upon a wooden token. The flames coloured his skin with shadows. My body eased to the ground opposite him, heavy but grateful for pause. Without flourish, he extended the token. Carved wood, small as a coin, yet etched with marks too subtle for accident. Spirals, cuts, impressions that seemed to echo the kind of letters pressed into my own chest, though these bore no direct command. Take it, he said. No trade, no leash, merely reminder. The wood was warm from his palm when mine enclosed it. The grooves pressed against my fingertips like rivers diverging and returning. I looked to him for explanation. He nodded, as though seeing the question already rise. There are stories, he began, voice slow, that speak of letters of life. Some carved by men onto clay, some written by time across stars, some uttered only once but echoing still. Your master knew fragments, perhaps, but letters alone are only cages if they close tight. True life happens when letters break their own pattern, when they bend into choice. His eyes reflected the fire while he studied me closely. But tell me, Clay One, when the merchants poured you like timber, what stirred in you? Was it only silence or something sharper, hotter? Did you feel anger? And when the boy gave you his charm, was that not something like tenderness? These emotions, alien though they seem, they are the cracks through which life seeps. Do you know yet what you will do with them, where they will take you? I stared at the token again. Could marks etched by such casual handhold truth like the sacred words burned into my breast? My silence stretched too long, and the traveller smiled faintly. Do not mistake me for a teacher. I speak not law but thought. You walk because you cannot remain in the square. You search because being a tool is not enough. That urge pressing inside you, it is not hunger, for you need no bread. It is not thirst, for rivers do not tempt you like beasts. It is meaning, calling. If you follow, it will break you. But breaking is sometimes a doorway. His voice lowered near whisper. In ruins eastward lie letters older than whispers of your maker. Some claim they are nothing. Some claim they carry power not of command but of choice, waiting for one brave enough to seek them. Perhaps they are ash, carried off by wind. Perhaps nothing waits, but if you cannot rest, perhaps try. You may discover not how to serve, but how to live, and perhaps what to make of the storm of feeling now rising in you. The traveller's words struck me like sparks against dry clay. The ruins might hold nothing but broken stone, yet the mention of older letters pulled me eastward. For the first time, my unease leaned toward a direction instead of drifting. I could not return to the workshop or to the merchants, and even the village's kindness could not hold me. All that remained was to walk on, carrying the token as guide and answer. I raised eyes to him, searching for further guide, but found only stillness. His smile was not triumphant, only weary. My path lies different, he said, tapping his own chest. A man walks only one road at once. Yours forks from mine here. He stood, shouldered his bag, and vanished into night as easily as smoke. For a long time his fire glowed, then dimmed. I felt the token heavier than any clay shard. Between my chest and palm lay 3 gifts now. Bread, crumbling but remembered. Charm stitched by innocent hands. Wood carved by wise ones restless still. All resting beside the dog, who leaned his head upon my heavy knee, as though voting yes to roads still unseen. That collection was enough. Enough to gather courage, enough to step beyond safety. So I rose at dawn. The east held ruins wrapped in desert haze, haunted by whispers of spirits bound and loosed. Each step that direction meant trial. Each step meant perhaps more loneliness, perhaps discovery, perhaps ending. Fear whispered pain might outweigh kindness. Perhaps ruin would shatter me utterly. Yet fear was proof of choice at work, and choice was more alive than silence had ever been. I looked once back at the ridges behind, imagining the village roofs catching smoke, imagining the merchants tallying profit, imagining empty corner of workshop, lamp long extinguished. Then I faced east, grasped the token, pressed bread and cloth to clay chest, and set one broad foot upon the waiting path. The dog shook his fur, unleashing dust into morning light, and followed. Thus began the search, not for orders carved, not for masters commanding, but for meaning itself. Eastward, toward ruins and unknown letters, we walked. My body carried weight of clay and shard, yet within pulsed the first true hunger to live, not because commanded, not because others defined it, but because the ache itself demanded answer. Eastward lay no path, only suggestion. Stones broke the earth like teeth, sharp and uneven, and sand pressed against my joints with every step. The dog loped easily ahead, paws making no complaint though the terrain sapped all sound from the world. The air turned dry, and the sun grew fierce as if testing resolve before any true trial had begun. By the second day I saw them shapes of fallen arches crouched against horizon, remnants of a place that once bore voices rich with faith or power. Now only wind passed through their ribs, each gust moaning faintly like voices long muted. The ruins greeted me not with welcome, but with weight. Every arch leaned inward as if watching. Every collapsed stone bore faint carvings indistinct yet insistent, as though letters nearly erased pressed still for memory. I halted at their edge, heavy chest rising and falling, though clay lungs drew no true breath. Beneath my ribs, the shard of creation and the wooden token rubbed together, restless. The dog smelled unease too, for its ears pitched flat, tail lowered, but it would not abandon me. Together we stepped into the dust-strangled silence. As shadows stretched longer, I no longer felt alone. Air thickened, heat pressed though sun dropped. My joints ground more tightly, every shift an echo louder than expected. The smell of salt hit first sharp and biting, wrong in this desert of stone. I followed until moonlight broke clean across a circle drawn thick upon the ground. Salt, layered and precise, lines unbroken, though cracked by age. And within it shimmered a figure, neither flesh nor clay, but fire bent into shape like smoke, deciding it wished briefly to remember a body. The dog barked once and retreated 2 steps, hackles erect, but still refused to flee. The being looked toward me as though it had waited endless years for someone to come stand at its prison's edge. Its form flickered, sometimes tall, sometimes coiled, colours bending between ember and shadow. When it spoke, heat edged every syllable like iron drawn fresh from forge. "Clay child," it said, rushing words crowding one atop another. "You walk with emptiness clinging like chains. I smell the hollowness that ache you cannot name. You long not to serve, not to obey, but to live. Do you know what flavour such life can taste?" I did not answer. Clay mouth wavered but held silence. My stillness met its blaze. The djinn moved closer to the rim of salt, flame-licking invisible barrier. Sparks cracked as if bars bit at its skin. "I can give it," it pressed on, voice quick and relentless, every word pouring like hot oil. "I can burn letters into you deeper than your master dared. I can strike away numbness, flood you with sensation, joy, pain, memory, desire. No more emptiness." I shook within, though no tremor showed. To feel as men, to know their laughter not as witness but as participant. Temptation rose, heavy and bright. The dog whined, unsettled. I bent low, resting a heavy hand on its back, anchoring us both against the torrent of voice. "But," the djinn hissed, tone shifting sharper, "all things weigh balance. My gift is not free. Break this circle for me, and your emptiness breaks as well. Free me, and in return I will bind you with letters so fierce the world itself will bow. You will feel, yes, but you will also serve. To me, my fire will thread through your clay, command your steps, turn your searching into my quest. Chains invisible, but radiant, beautiful. Servitude, yet filled with power. The question lit within me raw and burning. Have power, yet lose freedom, or keep hollowness, chewing forever at silence." The salt circle glowed faintly, lines cutting into ground like veins made from crystal. My fists tightened. I remembered the merchants tallying my value in coin, the boy handing me his token not as command but as gift, the traveller's words about letters that bend into choice. The djinn's fire spoke command disguised as offer. I stood still, a tower of clay unmoving. The djinn rushed words faster, heat increasing, urging choice without reflection. What is freedom in emptiness? Better to serve with feeling than to wander hollow. Better a commanded life with sensation than clay stiff with nothing but absence. For a long moment, its logic bent me near. My chest split with desire to feel bread's taste not as echo but as warmth pulsing in veins, to hear laughter not as sound carried to ears of stone but as vibration trembling marrow. Even pain, I thought, might be better than this endless weight of nothing. I stepped nearer the circle, mass casting shade over the salt. The dog growled deep, sound cutting the djinn's flood like a blade. I looked down upon the glowing boundary. Cracks lined parts of it, as if centuries had tired the prison. With a single stamp of heavy foot, I could break it. The djinn's eyes flared, tongues of flame licking as though anticipating. Instead, I knelt. Not to break, but to touch. My thick fingers brushed salt. It burned sharp, searing seam of clay. Yet I held steady. The heat lashed. The djinn screamed in triumph, mistaking my touch for consent. But still I did not break. I traced fingers slowly around, feeling fissures, refusing to lift the grain fully aside. My silence lengthened, until its rush of words faltered in frustration. "You resist," it spat, voice trembling between fury and disbelief. "You refuse sensation for hollow shell? You caught death by stagnation? I bent lower. Through cracked salt I drew one line carefully, enough to open a sliver, not enough to free it wholly. Instantly heat surged through gap, biting at my palm, clawing along arm, driving letters glowing atop clay chest like molten veins. Pain lanced first true pain I had known. Clay fissured, pieces cracking from edge of shoulder. The rune it conjured seared itself against my chest, burning deeper than original letterwork. I grunted aloud my first sound, not command, but raw voice scraped up from abyss. The djinn howled, pressing itself forward, but the incomplete crack held it bound still. Not triumph, no. Agony, choice, breaking. My clay skin split. Fire etched into me a rune unknown, carved with struggle itself. The dog barked furiously, snapping at tendrils of flame seeping from crack. I pressed hands together, endured searing, did not flee. Minute by minute I withstood until the glow subsided, until the circle sealed once more by force of my closing, leaving the djinn still imprisoned, shrieking with rage and thwarted promise. Silence followed, heavy, not with emptiness, but with aftermath. My body shook, chest cracked with glowing scar carved unbidden, a rune of memory, of choice accepted through fire, not commanded. The djinn seethed within its cage, yet its words no longer commanded allure. I had tasted pain, and with it, meaning. My dog pressed against my shattered leg, whimpering yet present. That weight of loyalty grounded me stronger than any fiery promise. I staggered back from circle, each motion carrying agony new and sharp. My clay now felt fragile, but within it pulsed ache more alive than all silence before. For the first time, fragments of memory brushed me as if real. Laughter heard in village, warmth of child's bold hand, old woman's bread cracking. They no longer seemed distant, they pressed fresh, as though newly lived. The djinn called after me, voice curdled and sharp. You bleed now, clay man. You bleed not with blood, but with loss, with possibility. I gave you choice, and you squandered. Return when silence eats you alive. I did not answer. My throat held ache of sound, but I pressed lips shut. I turned, shards crumbling from shoulder, each step slow but willful. The dog padded close, body leaned against me as though holding what weight I could not. Together we walked from ruins. Pain followed, yet not emptiness. Letters blazed faint on chest, burned by struggle, promising not ease but possibility. I carried agony and knowledge side by side. This was life, not command, not ease, not hollow shell, endurance. Courage lived in refusing both silence and servitude, even at cost of breaking. As dawn crawled across desert, lighting edges of broken arches behind, I pressed again the shard of creation and token and cloth upon my seared chest. With them, and with dog's loyal shape at heel, I walked away, broken yet alive, no longer hollow, carrying burden and gift together. The plain stretched empty before me, night draping its vast cloth over the earth. The ruins lay far behind, their splintered arches still haunting my broken body, and yet I could not remain there. My clay bore cracks now glowing faintly, and through those fissures pulsed the rune burned by the djinn. It throbbed like a second heart, promising power, whispering numbness, threatening eternity without pain. Each step toward the open horizon became a question heavier than any stone I had carried when serving a master. At last I came to a crossroads, though no signs leaned upon the earth, and no travellers marked its way. Only the faint indent of paths stretched separate, one bending toward hills, one into dark forests, one fading into low marshland. But the true fork was not in the road beneath my feet. It was within my chest. The rune burned, pressing visions against my clay mind. On one side, strength impervious, skin impenetrable, emptiness wrapped soft to assure no wound ever entered me again. On the other, frailty, pain, fracture, the gnawing terror that one day the cracks would not hold, that clay would crumble into dust with no spell to bind it. The dog padded forward, nose twitching, circling as if to test each road. Then it returned, and sat against my side, its warmth leaning into my fractured seam. Its steadfast weight pressed reality more firmly than the rune's glowing lies. I looked upward. Stars reeled across sky, each one silent but present, ancient fire surviving through unfathomable distance. They too bore wounds unseen yet endured. The rune's promise whispered that I might outlast even them, unshaken, never touched by loss again. But stars that cannot fade are no stars at all. They become cold stones, forgotten. I did not wish to be forgotten, even if that meant living shorter than stone endures. So I knelt in dust. The fragments of humanity I had carried felt heavy all at once. I laid them before me, the bread, now hardened as wood, yet holding scent of smoke and warmth of the woman who had dared meet my eyes. I placed it on the earth. Next, the child's linen charm. Fraying, thread, so uneven, it seemed to unravel even in stillness. And yet that crooked stitch held greater mercy than all polished chains merchants had offered for my strength. Beside it, the traveller's wooden token, grooves cut into slow spirals that seemed to echo the shape of rivers carving earth after flood. Each gift bore something fragile, mortal, yet alive. I pressed the shard of my own creation among them, rough, cracked, a single half-letter whose incompletion had haunted me since I first held it. Together, they lay like offerings upon the ground. Around them, night whispered. Beyond them, the rune within me thrummed like drums at harvest, insistent, demanding choice. The dog nudged my arm with its nose, patient, steady, as though sensing the weight crashing over me. I ran a thick palm over its coarse fur, feeling warmth seep into my clay as though declaring, here is life, not immortality, not numbness, just presence, ears sensitive to sound, heart vulnerable to silence, body destined one day for stillness. Yet loyalty shimmered in those eyes alive with trust. Fear whispered louder than the jinn's bargain. What if kindness fades faster than pain? What if every gift I carry is torn from me, and all that remains is suffering engraved deeper than this glowing scar? Did I dare choose to feel, if feeling meant losing again and again, until no fragment of me could keep standing? But fear is not decision, only shadow. I raised my heavy head and gazed at those fragile tokens once more. They spoke not of certainty, but of chance deliberately embraced. A child had dared part with a charm meant for his own safety. An old woman had given food, knowing whispers would condemn her. A traveller had spared words for me, though my silence offered him no reward. Every one of them risked themselves in some small way, and I shaped from clay, given unnatural body stronger than theirs, would I refuse risk when even the frailest had chosen it for me. My chest throbbed again. The rune expanded until it seemed the cracks would not hold. My decision did not thunder like storm. No divine voice unfolded with command. It arrived quieter, as the dog's breath against my side, as the memory of crumbs cracked upon my teeth, as the feel of thread snagging clumsily upon my clay finger. I chose, not triumphantly, but simply. I chose pain. I chose vulnerability. To live meant cracking. To be human, even in part, meant accepting loss as price for real touch. The rune flared once, searing up my body in sharp torment. My vision swam. Forest, marsh, hills, fracturing into shards of light. For a moment I thought I had doomed myself, that the jinn's scar would consume me entirely. But slowly, it settled. The glow dimmed into scar, no longer pulsing with promises of numbness. Instead, it lay quiet upon my chest. Branded reminder of temptation, yes, but also of refusal embraced. I collapsed to knees, strength bleeding out. Soil bit into my cracked legs. The dog pressed its warm body against me, steady, watchful. Pain rang in my seams as truth undeniable. Yet with pain came something more. I felt the night air sharper upon my surface, the grit of dust within fissures. I felt my own weight sitting heavy, not as burden, but as existence. I could sense, faintly, rhythm inside me like heartbeat awkward, halting, but mine. So I gathered the tokens again, cradling them as though fragile wings. Bread crumbling, cloth unravelling, wood smoothed by travel, shard broken, and scar upon chest still warm from refusal. These I carried. They were not armour. They invited more pain, for they reminded me of tenderness that could be lost. Yet, therein lay humanity. I looked to the crossroads once more. Hills, forest, marsh, each path dark and uncertain. Yet whichever I chose now, I would walk not as hollow clay meant only to shield, but as being who felt, who could break, who could belong. The dog barked once, short and devoted, as if blessing the road wherever it led. So I stood. My body trembled still, but not from hesitation. Doubt would follow always, pain with it. But decision was no grand pronouncement. It was breath drawn in still moment, fragile but real. I had chosen mortality, chosen to feel more than command, even if that meant sorrow breaking me countless times. And in that choice, a deeper strength set roots. Not strength of stone unyielding, but strength of soil that accepts rain, sun, frost, yet endures through growth. I pressed hand to chest. The scar burned faintly beneath gentle pressure, reminding me what fire promised and what I had refused. Into that place I pressed the charm, the wood, the shard, the bread. Over them all, the dog's warmth leaned once again. The plain stretched silent, waiting. Stars above flared their distant fires. In that vast stillness, I knew I was alive, not through command or through emptiness, but through decision. The road back to the village felt longer than when I had first left. Each step pressed my cracked weight into the earth until the soil itself seemed to carry memory of my choice. The dog stayed close at my side, its breath a steady sound in rhythm with my uneven gait. When the roofs at last rose against the horizon, smoke curling like handwriting over the twilight sky, I felt a strange stillness stir within me. Not joy, not triumph. Something quieter. A return, yes, but not the same as leaving. The first villagers who saw me stiffened. They counted the cracks etched across my limbs, the faint rune glowing like scar at my chest. Their eyes shifted between fear and recognition. Whispers passed again, but softer this time. Unsure which story to tell, monster returned, or wanderer altered. I walked slowly on, showing no haste, my hands open at sides as if to say I carried nothing but presence. At the well near the square, a child tried to drag a bucket too heavy for her arms. Rope burned her palms as it slipped. Villagers nearby stood frozen between caution and instinct. I bent, enormous shadow folding onto knees, and reached carefully. With one broad hand I steadied the rope, lifted, and set the bucket down without spilling. Water sloshed, but did not waste. The girl looked up, fear flickering, then shifting her lips quirked into a small smile. She whispered a quiet thank you before running off, her voice trailing like birdsong. No one shouted after me, no one crossed themselves against omen. They stood, uncertain, but their silence was not rejection. It was waiting, and for me that was enough. I walked onward, my body heavy yet steadier with that small exchange. A simple act, but within it lived the proof I had sought, not commanded, not feared, but allowed presence among them. As evening spread, lamps lit windows one by one. Life continued, cooking fires crackling, voices winding into song broken and human. I chose no door to press upon, no fire to intrude. Instead I settled at the village boundary, where grass opened into plain, a place not outside nor fully in. The dog curled against me, head warming the crack at my thigh, its breathing slow with trust. I lowered myself to ground. Clay met earth with thud, firm and grounding. Above, stars stretched infinite, drawing silver paths across dark. The air cooled quickly, wind moving like a sigh through eaves of huts. I smelled roasted grain, sharp wine, distant herbs steeped for healing. Faint bursts of laughter, carried to me not directed at or against, but simple mirth shared among neighbours. Their sound did not wound me now. It comforted even when I sat apart, for I knew I could choose to remain outside in calm, or step nearer should courage one day permit. Choice was gift enough. I placed my tokens before me, spreading them gently upon the ground. The hardened bread, the fraying charm, the carved wooden token, the shard of creation now dulled by travel. Around them, the night breathed. My scar pulsed faintly, not with threat but reminder. I touched each token slowly, heavy fingers careful. These were the shape my humanity had taken. Not polished relics, not grand commands, but offerings given by hands willing to risk small kindness. The dog stirred, pressing closer until its ribcage touched my own clay side. Together we shared the silence, broken only by crickets and distant talk dwindling into night. I let my body ease, joints loosening, cracks not as wounds now but as openings where air passed freely. Life was not loud in me. It was subtle, like embers beneath ash, still warming despite appearance of stillness. The villagers glanced as they fetched last water, as they shuttered windows, as they corralled children indoors. Some nodded, cautious but not hostile. One even whispered goodnight, too faint for certainty but enough to linger. I did not reach for more. To sit beneath stars, uncommanded, unfeared, accompanied by trust of one beast and gentle memory of others that was belonging enough. Peace is not thunderous. It does not crash. It settles slow, a rhythm discovered rather than imposed. I felt it woven into cool earth beneath my palms, into dogs' quiet presence, into the laughter of humans fading into rest. The ache of searching quieted, not ended, but eased.